You're listening to The Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, on Alternative Talk, AM 1150. Now, back to the show with local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Welcome back to The Money Hour with your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, right here at 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, March 18th show. I'm here to help you build a strong financial blueprint 1 week and one show at a time. If you're hearing my show at a different time or day, you are listening to a rebroadcast. You can call the show at 1-855-400-1150. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com to discuss anything regarding money. Talk with your host, that would be myself, or the guest that I have in studio today. Right now in studio, I have Cindy Peschel-Hull with Coldwell Banker Bain. And Cindy, thank you so much for coming in. First time having you in studio. Very excited.
Yeah, thank you, Tina. Thanks for having me.
And a little bit about Cindy. Cindy has been a real estate broker for 14 years. She is a corporate executive relocation specialist, accredited luxury home specialist, accredited buyer representative, accredited seller representative, and senior real estate specialist. All these designations require hours of education and commitment to your craft. So Cindy, thank you again so much. And I'm excited about this topic because there is the lack of inventory that we've had forever. Interest rates still being at unbelievable lows, sometime, having to go up. And actually, I want to talk to you about that as we get into the show. So really talking about how do you get your offer accepted in this market? And I, as your host of the show and really bringing in the best of the best in all areas of regarding financing, you've got to work with a seasoned agent that has a great reputation in the market and knows what they're doing to navigate through that process. So Cindy, how do you choose the best agent to represent you? What does that look like?
Well, Tina, I've come up with a list of about 4 or 5 things that I tell buyers to look at when they're looking for an agent. And the first one is experience. And, how long have they been in the business? What is their expertise? How do they negotiate? How do they write their contracts and communicate? And then again, reputation. Those are the first, I guess that's a lot for number one, but that's a very important piece to choosing an agent. And then also, is the agent full-time? Mm-hmm. We have so many people, because the market is what it is, they're getting back into the industry or just starting real estate. And that's not always the best agent to choose in a market like we're in. And then an agent that really knows the market and understands what the climate is and what's going on, so they can actually guide their buyers to make good decisions. And then referrals and references, and to really to trust the people that have used good agents, get recommendations from them, referrals from them, and then if you find an agent, ask them for some testimonials from previous buyers. Yeah,
great advice, Cindy. And I want to go back really quickly on the reputation and why the importance with the reputation. Can you explain that to my listeners? Because I think it might be hard for a consumer to know how important that is in this market.
Well, basically, what the important piece of the reputation is how their reputation is with other agents in the market. That's the piece that really comes into play in a market where we're seeing multiple offers.
Yes.
And oftentimes, if it's a new agent or an agent that has maybe had some issues with people in the industry, that can actually come back to haunt the buyer and that agent. So keeping your reputation, really at the forefront, integrity, is a really big piece of it. It really comes back to agent.
Yeah. And if you think about it, if you were a seller and the agent that's representing you, you're looking for another agent that's coming and bringing that buyer, and they're going to have to coordinate this whole process, which is very, very complicated. So if you've got an agent that everyone knows how to do that job and do it well, that's the one you want to accept that offer, because it's going to make sure everything's going to run smoothly. So very important. Cindy, what is your advice on the importance of having a pre-approval letter before you begin looking for a home?
That's a very key piece. And as you know, Tina, but yes, for a couple of reasons. The first of which, the buyer doesn't know what price point they're in until they have a pre-approval. So they have to meet with a really very good lender so that they can get the pre-approval letter in place. And all of our offers that we write for our buyers have to be submitted with a pre-approval letter. The listing agent, seller won't even really entertain an offer unless they know that buyer is equally qualified. And then the other piece is if the lender has started the underwriting process, is also a very big piece, or if it's been through underwriting, and Tina can speak a little bit more to that. because it tells the seller that this person is actually not just qualified to buy this home, but they've gone through a lot of the processes involved so that they are in a good position to actually close the sale.
Yeah, and great advice. And you need to make sure that you've got a strong pre-approval and that it has gone through the underwriting process. So that's a question you want to ask. But know as a buyer that your pre-approval is based and subject to the information you provided at loan application. So just because you have a solid pre-approval underwritten, everything has to get verified on every type of loan. There's no way around that. It's disclosed on every pre-approval letter. But those of you, my regular listeners, and that's why I've tagged in my $5,000 guarantee, is so if for some reason something happens, it can help out on that process. So Cindy, when you find a home that you want to write an offer on, what do you need to put together to have that great offer that's going to have that great presence with the seller?
Well, the first thing is the pre-approval letter. That's the very first thing that I would make sure that we have in line. And then the other thing is what I do is make sure that I've contacted that listing agent to find out what's important to that seller.
Yeah.
Is the close date important? Is the price the most important? Is the possession date important? Meaning, do they need a rent back? In this market, a lot of sellers are selling their homes and don't know where to go.
Yeah.
So they often, that comes into play. Can I stay in the home while I find another home once I get my equity out and close my transaction? So finding those things out before helps me write an offer to best put my buyer in the best light for that seller.
Yeah.
And then the other piece is determining value. In this market, we're seeing anywhere from a 5 to 20% increase over list price. So the list price sometimes does not mean the sale price.
Yeah.
So, letting buyers know that, but also, finding out that based on the market conditions, could this house support that price?
Yes.
And so we put together a little mini market analysis for our buyers so that they feel comfortable in a number that they want to escalate up to if they have to.
And that's great, is making sure the buyer understands. And that's a good point that, just because it's listed at this price, to know what you're going to have to go over and then really be confident in that maximum price that you're willing to go with so that you're staying under that.
Correct. Exactly. And then the other piece that is really a big part, because a lot of buyers are waiving their inspections, appraisals, and different things. Let's get a pre-inspection done. Or did the seller do a pre-inspection and we can review that? Sometimes the timelines are really tight and we don't, the house comes on the market and they're reviewing offers in 2 or 3 days and a buyer works full time and they can't get over there. So if the seller has done the pre-inspection, that's very helpful. And then the other thing is when we write a strong offer, we want to keep the timelines really tight.
Yes.
If there is an inspection period, if there's any title review period, keep those very, very tight. And then also a very robust earnest money can really come into play and make the buyer's offer look stronger. Yeah,
and on the earnest money, I've talked to my buyers out there on the earnest money, and because that's going towards it's money that they're going to get back and go towards the purchase of their home.
Correct. Yes, it's going toward their down payment. Yes, it does. So it does come back. And our jobs as real estate professionals is to make sure that we don't miss any timelines so we don't jeopardize that.
Exactly.
So it's very important. That's where experienced agent comes in. Very important piece of it, to watch your timelines.
So Cindy, what do you tell your buyers that come to you and ask, can I negotiate price with the seller?
We're really good negotiators. I work with my husband, Richard Hull, as well.
Yes, you guys are.
Yeah, and we are some of the best. We think we are anyway. But in this market, what our job is to get our offers accepted.
Yes.
So if a home has been on the market 30 plus days, we're all over negotiating. We're really all about that. And in previous markets, we've been very successful at that. But in this market, the negotiating is really with the listing agent and the seller, how we can best show our clients to get that offer accepted. So, negotiating price in this market is really kind of non-existent.
It's not going to happen. And finding that home that's been on the market for 30 days, that's kind of challenging as well, right?
Can be tough, unless it's a diamond in the rough somewhere and we need some updates that, and most people want to buy a home that's move-in ready. So if we find a home that needs, several updates, or maybe it hasn't been maintained as well as some others, they tend to stay on the market longer. And we can have buyers that say, hey, you know what, I'm willing to take this on, and now we can negotiate price. So
Yes.
it's awesome.
Yeah. And for those of you that find those houses that out there need a little bit of work, remember there's rehab loans available. So you've just understanding what your options are and maybe be able to get something if you can't find one, find a house out there. So how important in today's market, well, you talked a little bit about this, a list of my questions about really talking with the seller's agent and getting an idea exactly where they're at. And you made a good point on that with this particular seller may not be able to find another home, or there's these things that may apply to them and it may not. Maybe they need a longer closing date, not a shorter closing date. So what other questions are you asking the agent that's representing the seller to help position your buyer?
You know, those are really the key points. I would say possession date is the number one thing right now.
Okay.
Because close date can be adjusted. We don't like to have too long of close dates just because there's things that can come into play that could be a problem, but we like to know really what that possession date is. We have in fact, I think you're going to work with one of our clients on their purchase. We're listing their home tomorrow, and they're very concerned about what do we do and we're assuming their home is going to sell quickly, and they need a place to go. So, you know, possession date for them and how we look at the offers that come in is going to really come into play for them.
Makes total sense. So, Cindy, you hear a lot in the industry about writing a letter to the seller. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question in today's market. We have had it where our buyers have their offer has been accepted because of the wonderful letter photo that they sent to the seller, and it just really touched heartstrings for the seller, and they got the home. We've also seen in this market particularly where sellers don't want to see the letter. It's really interesting. Several times that I've had buyers write letters, or I've represented sellers, and they said, you know what, don't show us the letter. We don't want to see it. And I think they don't want to get emotionally involved with a buyer. They want to look at it like a business decision.
Makes sense.
Just look at the terms, the price, all the pieces that make sense to them.
Yeah. So we talked about the home inspection, Cindy, on pre-inspection. How many sellers are you seeing? I mean, is it a large percentage of sellers that are doing the pre-inspection where they're going out and getting an inspection on the home before even listing it?
You know, the percentage-wise, it's probably 30%. It's not a huge percentage. It's not half probably, but there's a good portion of it. There's some agents that feel really strongly when they list homes that they think that's very important.
And there's others that don't. I mean, it's really interesting to see that industry leaders and experts have both sides of that.
Both sides to that coin, absolutely.
Yep.
But in any case, a pre-inspection is very important, and how it differs from a regular inspection, it's usually half the cost.
Okay.
So for buyers that may end up bidding on several homes before they get a home, it's not like spending $500 per inspection. I'm just
so half the cost meaning is half the inspection. I mean, can you explain that to my?
Good question. No, the difference would be a full inspection would be a full report with photos and a published report for the buyer.
Okay.
What a pre-inspection is it's a verbal report. So it's very important that either the buyer's agent or and particularly the buyer be there and walk around with the inspector. He checks all the main systems, the plumbing, the electrical, the roof, the siding. He goes in the crawl space, the attic. And so he knows all the main systems, so he won't check all the appliances necessarily.
Okay.
But all the main systems, the furnace and all of those things, water heaters, so that going in, buyer beware, really, what the main issues are. And if there are some key issues that you're not willing to take on, or at what price will you take on, you at least know up front. But bottom line is it's buyer beware, buyer do their due diligence. And so we rarely sell a home that there hasn't been some sort of inspection done, just because we feel strong.
I was just going to ask,
very strong about that.
There ever a buyer that said they don't want to go in and do an inspection, how would you advise on that?
Yeah, we feel strongly about it. It should be done. And there's been times where, in fact, just this week, Richard had a buyer and she could not be at the inspection because the timeline was so tight. He was there and then had an extensive conversation with the inspector following the inspection, so she knew what she was going to get should she move forward.
Yeah. So escalation clause and or an addendum. Can you talk to my listeners, because that's another strategy that's used a lot in the market. Can you break that down? Yeah,
that's a really big piece in today's market. It's an escalation addendum, and what that is basically because a home may be priced at $500,000 and because there's several buyers that might be interested in that home. what they'll do is include an escalation addendum, which means that the buyer will escalate up to X, potentially, let's say they'll escalate up to 550.
Okay.
And then there's, might be 5 other buyers doing the same, and whatever their top number is. One could be 560, 175, 575, whatever. And then there's a piece in it that you would say, I will go to 2,500, 2,800, 4,000, whatever number over the highest competing offer. And that's what it is. It's a little confusing until you see it on paper when you're going to write your offer, but it's a very good way to show your offer in the best light and let the seller and the agent know how high that the buyer is willing to go.
You've got your cap that you're willing to go. And you've got ideally what you want to pay, but you're saying that you're going to pay that much over whatever the price is, and then they have to show you that was an actual offer.
They do. They have to. The listing agent has to show you the competing offer, so they can't just try to get you to bid up to get your number. They've got to provide you the copy of that offer.
So now, Cindy, where that doesn't work, and you hear a little bit more now in best offer, come in with your best offer. So they're just, can you explain what the listing agent or the seller, what they're representing or requesting in that situation? Yeah,
that's a good one. It's highest and best. We'll often get calls back and say, okay, we've got 4 offers. We want to see all 4 buyers come in with their highest and best.
Yeah.
And they just don't want to play the escalation game.
Yeah, I would say that's a little more stressful for the buyer, because they're,
Yes. Yeah. We had an example yesterday. Actually, this is the one that Richard did the pre-inspection on. And it was a home that was very, very dated and needed a roof and many, many updates inside. And the buyer was willing to go only to a certain number. And when the listing agent called Richard back and said, bring in your highest and best, he was awesome with her because he told her everything it needed, had an estimate of some of those costs, and she only raised her price by $5,000, and she got it.
Really?
Got it. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. And $5,000, you're talking maybe $25, $30 a month.
That's right. And
that's crazy.
So had she gone into a panic and got a little more emotionally involved and I have to get this house, she might have offered well over that and got it, but paid more than she needed to. So good counsel from a good agent is really, really important.
Definitely. I'm going to wrap this up here, but one more in review top 10 tips in getting your offer accepted in today's real estate market. Avoid number 11. What's number 11? Number
11 is if you don't get your first offer accepted, talk to your agent and find out what you can do differently next time.
Yeah, you got to learn. Sometimes you learn through those trials and to be so successful. So, Cindy, thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it and look forward to having you back again soon.
Thank you, Tina. It's fun. Yeah.
And this is your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, signing off for the day. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Of course, I'll be here same time, same place, right here at 11:50 a.m. KKNW.